Good morning, everybody. Let's go ahead and get started. Today, we're going to not look at any charts or statistics or trends, but we're going to talk about today about visitor types. And then we're going to talk about some things that you shouldn't do as a church if you want visitors to return a second or third time. And if we get far enough, and I doubt we do, we'll talk about church mystery shopping. So before we begin, let's start with a prayer. Dear Father God in heaven, we are most thankful again to be here. We're thankful every week that we can come unabated and hear your word, Father, freely. And we're thankful for that word because it's the tool that we use to know how to live. Father, we pray that all we say and do today will be according to your will. And pray, Father, that everybody gains something from this. We're thankful for Jesus, and it's in his name we pray. Amen. I'm going to go against the grain this morning and do something that nobody should do as part of evangelism, since this is South Carolina and Clemson country, but I got to say this. Go Wolfpack. What is that? 2 out of the last 4 years we beat them? Yeah, that's right. For those of you who are uninitiated. So I got to put these things. So we're going to talk real quick. This is what we covered last week at a high level. Church attendance is increasing, but still down from pre-pandemic. Boomers have decreased attendance the most since the pandemic. Boomers' sudden exit, or a big percentage of them, 22%, whatever it was, let the volunteer and attendance void. Millennials' attendance has increased the most since the COVID, and Gen X has also increased. Non-white millennials have driven the increase in attention, and Gen Z, per polls, say they're more open to God than the other generations. And again, online church attendance and giving has increased significantly, and many Gen X and millennials have adopted hybrid worship. So we're going to start with a verse today, and here's what we need to do during this class now for the next several weeks. Everybody in here needs to not think how you normally think when you come to church. You know, I want you to think like every visitor that comes in this church is your responsibility. And if they don't come back, it's your responsibility. That's what all of us need to do. We need to be able to think like they think and see like they see. And for you to do that, you got to kind of get away from your normal thinking, because church can become familiar, right? Just like walking in your home can become familiar. And so to understand what somebody's coming through or going through, and we're going to talk about all these things today, we have to understand where people are coming from. And nobody did this better than Paul. And we can see from the verse here above, Paul understood people. He has to do that, because to do the things he's going to talk about in this verse, you have to understand who your audience is. So let's read this. Though I am free and belong to no one, I have made myself a slave to everyone to win as many as possible. To the Jews, I became like a Jew to win the Jews. To those under the law, I became like one under the law, though I myself am not under the law, so as to win those under the law. To those not having the law, I became like one not having the law, although I'm not free from God's law, but also under Christ's law, so as to win those not under the law. To the weak I became weak, to win the weak. I have become all things to all people, so that by all possible means I might save some. I do this all for the sake of the gospel, that I might share in its blessings. Now, for Paul and you know, if you look at the Bible and you look how Matthew's written to a Jewish audience and then Luke's written to a different audience, we see, even though it's all inspired by God, it does reflect people's personalities. And so Paul here is trying to appeal to different people depending on when he was preaching different audiences. For him to do that, he has to understand where those people are coming from. And that's what we have to understand too. So for the last 2 weeks, we looked at these trends. So we know what's going on in the world today, how people are thinking about church. And then last week, we looked at generational thoughts, you know, because those are different too. Because it's all about, you're going to get 30 seconds to 3 minutes to talk to somebody in that foyer or in the pew or in an elevator or at work. You're not going to get 20 minutes. And so during that time, you got to be thinking, what are they thinking? What are they wanting, right? So we all need to understand that to reach out and connect with somebody, you got to know where they're coming from. And Paul was very good at doing that. That's what he's saying right here. I can connect with anybody. And that's something we all can do. It's not something you're born with. It's a strategy, really, and a Christian strategy. So now we're going to talk about the type of church visitors. So going even a step further down, because again, you only got a limited amount of time when you're talking to someone. What are they looking for? I'll say the same thing I said last week. In a perfect world, people would walk through this door just because they want to worship God. That's pure and undefiled religion kind of right? But the truth is, people have needs, and we have to meet those needs. And it's no different now than 2,000 years ago. What did Jesus do to meet needs? He met needs, and then he preached. What did he do? Anybody? He did what?
He fed them.
He fed them. What else did he do? Healed them. I mean, he met needs. So it's a different maybe need today, but it's still needs. People have needs. They're coming here to make a connection, or they have a need. So to understand what they want, we have to listen first of all. That's something that I'm not good at, but we need to listen so we understand where these folks are coming from. But let's look at this, and you could break this visitor types down into 3 or 6 or 12 if you wanted to, but here's just something to work with so we understand everybody that comes to that door is not the same. So the first type is explorer church visitor. They're coming here looking for a new home. They already go to church, but the church that they're going to is not meeting their need for some reason. There's something that they are looking for, and it's, so these are church people. They're not unchurched, but they're not satisfied. So look at the example down at the bottom. Young family with mom and dad walk in with a 6-year-old. They love their current church, but the church does not have a good youth program. There are not enough kids or activities at the current church. Now, I've said this up here teaching before, but every time I talk to a visitor with kids, I talk about our youth program because it's always been good. We've had good deacons running it. And so, it's a draw, right? Because when you're at that age where you got young kids, the souls of your children are often more valuable to you than your own soul. And so this will always be a draw. But this need could be, it doesn't necessarily have to be youth. It could be something else, but they're not getting their need met. So would this kind of visitor be a higher probability candidate maybe to return here for a second or third visit? Say again? Yeah, I think so. If we meet their needs, if we, meet their needs or try to, or they see some kind of availability or open there. So let's look at the next one. This is the fear of missing out, FOMO. I didn't write this. Somebody else wrote this, but I had to look it up. But it's just, one of those like laugh out loud things. This church visitor visits your church simply because he or she heard someone talking about it, or they saw the sign out here with something, or they saw a lot of cars here, or they voted here. And you're going to hear me talk about a lot of twos today, but I'm going to tell you, I know at least 2 visitors that's been here in the last year that said they came here just because they voted here. So just all kinds of things motivate people to come, But this kind of person, and here's your example, Karen. That's an unfortunate name these days, but we're going to assume Karen's a good person here. They moved into the neighborhood and live about 2 blocks away. And she has no intention of visiting your church. But one day as she's driving by, she sees a banner or you're advertising a conference. And so she's curious and comes to check you out. Because you ever been to a restaurant that's full, it's a new restaurant that's full, what do you say to your spouse? Man, we need to go check that place out. It's got a lot of people, right? That's what people, they do that with church too. So is Karen a likely candidate to come back? Anybody? Maybe. Do you think I don't know that if she'll come here just to see what we're doing, I don't know that would be a high probability. Now, we're not going to dismiss any visitor. Every visitor comes to that door is our honored guest, and I'm hoping that all of us would take time to get to know them and talk to them. But I don't know if that's a high probability of somebody coming, because she's coming for a reason, probably this not to meet her kind of need or anything like that. Questions or comments on that? 2 of them so far. Yes?
I think there's a lot to say about connection. And when Karen can be a candidate for coming back if she makes a connection with the person.
Right. And that's going to be true of all these. But just speaking in general terms, what you're going to see is some of these are going to be, if you had to put a number on it or say a probability, say some of them are probably more likely than others. But connections is what it's all about. And hopefully on the last Sunday, you'll have enough time, we're going to talk about connections and those kind of things at a much deeper level. The amenable church visitor is someone that comes simply because someone asked them to. You'd be like a neighbor or a friend. You know, you've been asking a coworker to come for 5 years, and they just get tired of you asking them, and they come. Or, you know, a neighbor. The example they give, however, is a boyfriend and girlfriend. And we've seen a lot of that, right? Probably many of you in here started attending church because you were a boyfriend or girlfriend of somebody in the church. The first date I took Sue to was a Wednesday night service. We went to the church and then Pizza Hut. That was our first date. So a lot of people do this, right? So if you're looking at somebody that's a friend or a neighbor and they don't want to come at all, but they come just so you won't keep it, are they a high probability to come again? None of these are totality. I'm talking about just, would you say that that's probably a higher one? Probably not. But what about the boyfriend, girlfriend, if they date a long time? Yes?
It could be, and you know, the way this is pitched kind of lends it a little more to no, but something like 80% of people that end up in a church is because they were invited by somebody else first. So the way this is particularly phrased may be lower probability, but I don't think we should discount the power of invitation.
No, I don't mean
because that is hugely valuable.
Yeah.
And you know, different people are going to be more open for a variety of reasons, but invitation is a huge reason people end up coming.
Because there's a personal connection there. Yeah, exactly.
You know someone from day one.
But getting back to the boyfriend, that one probably, you know, somebody dated 3 or 4 months or till they got married, there's a good chance they're going to convert, right? I mean, so that one's actually a pretty high probability if you look at that kind of scenario. The inquire event-driven church visitor. This is the type of visitor who's looking for a church to attend and or maybe attended when they were younger but fell off or fell away. You know, and so let's look at the example because I think that explains it better. Richard recently lost his wife to cancer after 40 years, and for the first time in his life, he feels lost, lonely, depressed, all the things you would go through dealing with something like that. And so one day, Richard's at home, and he's kind of reminiscing, maybe looking through a Bible or scrapbook or whatever it is, and he sees a flyer from a church. You know, it could be, you know, and this we'll talk about it being our church in this case. And he and his wife talked about coming, but they never did. So that's kind of a sad scenario, right? Because they never showed up before she passed. But what about somebody like this? It's coming from, it's really an event. This could be it could be a divorce. It could be job loss, financial ruin. It could be so many things. But it's event driven. What about somebody like that? Could they be a good probability of coming? Yeah, I think so. See, this is a need, right? Just like the very first, but it's a different kind of need because those people had a need. Their church just wasn't meeting. This is a need that's based on something happening. And how many times have y'all saw people in your life that had something happen to them and they maybe came and talked to you about it because they knew you went to church? I know I have. I remember 9/11. And there was a lady I worked with, and boy, she was... I don't know how, I can't say it really, but she wasn't a Christian church-going gal, I'll put it that way. But for 2 weeks, she talked to me every day after 9/11 about church. And then, because she was afraid those airplanes were going to, you know, go into more buildings and she'd be killed. But after about 2 weeks, it started subsiding, right? You know that light makes me look older when you do that, right? On that light. I know. So you know but somebody like this has a need, and again, we'll give a preview here, Keaton. We're going to do Keaton's going to do a grief seminar, and then we're going to probably have a class after that. One of our members asked about this. It's going to be grief. So that if you had something like that and they came, you could definitely meet their need, right? So these are the kind of things we have to think about. But a lot of people will come back to God when they have something terrible happen in their life. Yes?
I think in this example, it's when you said it's our responsibility to make sure visitors come back, I think this is one of those where it's imperative. Because I feel like I have lived through this scenario at one point in my life, going to a church because I knew I should be. I was lost at the time, and I had never felt so lonely
talk about your very point in a few minutes of what that's like to be a visitor coming in. Any other questions or comments? Got two more to look at. The nomad church visitor is somebody that jumps from church to church. They could actually be a member of a church, right? We've seen people that go to this church, then they go to this, and they go, then they come back to the one they went to. Well, visitors sometimes do the same thing, right? They're not wanting to necessarily put down hard roots. So there's going to a lot of churches. The example they give here is this Kay lady looks at his website. She may not go to a different church every Sunday. That'd be kind of crazy. But she will visit often just because she's not ready to put down any roots and she's just visiting and seeing what's out there, or she's looking for something that doesn't exist. I don't know what the reason is, but is this a person maybe that's a high probability? Again, everybody's reachable, not discounting that, but I'm just trying to let us see that some people are, are a better chance because of their position in life than others. What do you feel about this person? Say yeah. Anybody else? Yeah. Yeah. And I'm going to say this, and I've said this many times before, but I've been a deacon of evangelism for 16 or 18 years, and then now as an elder, that's my point area. But so I've seen us do a lot of things in evangelism, but I'll tell you what, no matter how much money you spend or what you do, when they walk through that door, you're right about that. You got the best chance of somebody coming back because they're already in here of their own volition, right? They didn't come because you coerced them. They walked through that door on their own, and so they are seeking. And it's an individual thing for sure. Now, finally, the last thing is the church settler. These are people that just moved into the neighborhood. Ding, 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 ding. Does that sound good? And there's many reasons why they would come to our church. One is close. They might be just looking for a Church of Christ right now. They got other options in the area, or there's some need that they're looking for. So let's look at this example. The Smith family has just moved into your community and are looking for a new church. They have never attended Church of Christ, but they decided to attend your church because it's closest to their house. Okay, that's okay. And so they're in their late 50s. They have 2 teenage daughters, but they have a couple requirements they've already thought about, and you can see what those are. They want a good youth program for the daughter, goes without saying. And they want a church that cares about community development. Somebody just putting their elbows down in the ground, sort of like we're doing with our service groups or the many other things this church does in the Fort Mill area. So are these, yes, go ahead.
We didn't necessarily that we didn't attend a church, but we were these people. And we would walk into buildings where we didn't know where to go. And it kind of goes back to that first one you mentioned with the children, what's they're focused on what's going to happen to the child and the safety of the child. And there were different churches we visited years ago and many times where we walked in with our children and there was no one to tell us where our kids go or how we were going to get contacted if our son had some problems or our daughter had a problem. It was very unnerving to walk in and not know where to go.
Yeah, we're going to get to your part too in just a few minutes, believe it or not.
Because it's not just, it's not looking for community, but what are you doing with these people's children and are you believing them?
Yeah, no doubt. This is probably a high probability, and what a lot of our guests are that come here on a weekly basis. They're people that's moved into the community. So they also have a need, right? But the difference between this and that first group, they already had a church. Their church just wasn't meeting his need. These people are coming in new. That what separates them as a separate category. And so they're open, they're seeking, they're trying to find. And when people are open and seeking, you got a chance with them, right? You won't get everybody. But so this kind of, we want to talk about these things because, again, when you're out there and you got a few minutes to talk to somebody about God, you need to be thinking, where are they coming from? Because when they walk in that door as a visitor, they have an agenda. You may not know it, but they have an agenda. They've thought about something. There's something going on. Could be one of these 6 things or something else, but something's going on that's made them say, we're going in that building today, and so we just kind of have to listen. Hopefully they engage them in some kind of communication and get enough out of it to understand. Any more questions or comments before we go to the next part? What we shouldn't do. Okay. So here's some things that when you read, like I did for this, you see a lot of things that you shouldn't do. Here's the first one. We don't have a pathway marked out for church visitors. Is the visitor parking clearly marked? We do not have a single visitor parking place. I'm going to get to the answer in a minute on that. When visitors come to your church, do they know what interest to use? So I'm going to tell you, we have ordered signs, a lot of them, and hopefully they'll get put on in the next 2 or 3 weeks. They've been ordered for a while. But one is we're going to add 2 visitor parking places out here, right beside the senior mobility parking places. And I know some of y'all won't probably be happy with that, but we have to have visitor marking up front. We need to have that. It's just what you should do. So, because I want you to think about this church. This church is laid out a little bit, I won't say weird, but different. The entrance, I'm trying to answer both these questions at the same time. You know, a lot of churches in the old days, the entrance would front the road, right? Ours fronts the side. Our main entrance is on the side. So when you're pulling in as a visitor, again, you have to think like a visitor, and people backing in and out and all this kind of stuff. You might not even notice that this is the entrance because you see the back parking lot, which is the bulk of our parking. It's easy not to understand where the entrance is at. Then you go to the back, and guess what you see back there? Another entrance. But you're sitting in your car, and nobody's going in that entrance except for a few people. You know, we have members go in that bottom entrance, but not a lot. So, you know, we're going to add 2 parking places out here, and on the back of the church, we've got a big sign that's going to say main entrance, and it's going to have an arrow pointing ahead. So if somebody comes in this church parking lot, they're going to know where to go. They don't have to ask. They don't have to wait and follow people. They will know. And we're going to talk about some more signage in a few minutes, too. Questions or comments?
That's good. I mean, they come in a little late, maybe you aren't covering it. All those scenarios you're covering, in my mind, they're all centered around, you know, people are going to stay where they make connections with other people.
Yeah.
The nomad or settlers or whatever other scenario you covered, it all comes back to us connecting with people.
It's 100% that way. If you go back to when we first started the greeter program, I bought a program from somebody, and we taught the greeters class. The only thing that was about, and this goes back to the early 2000s, is making connection. You have to make a connection. If you just come in here and a visitor just says, and even if 8 people go up to them and shake their hand and say, good morning, glad you're here, that's not making the connection. We'll talk about connections more. There's ways to make that happen when you're in a conversation that's easy. Now we're going to go to the front door's locked. Now, some of you are probably thinking, how could this happen at a church? Do you think this can happen at a church? Now, our door's locked during services for security reasons, right? Justin, that's right? Yeah. But when we're coming in and out, it's not. But this is talking about they couldn't get in the building. So Jim's not here today because he was actually going to share this, but he told me I could share this. So Jim Simmons, who sits back over here, about whenever he first started coming here 2 years ago, I don't know, he was attending a church right down the road. And this is during COVID, and the church had opened back up. And, and so he goes to church that morning, and he didn't have his mask. And so whoever was at the door said, you can't come in. You got to have a mask. So, okay, he was okay with that. He went to his car to get a mask. When he was back there, some lady got a limb fell off a tree and stuck in her sunroof, and he helped her for about 5 minutes. So then he gets his mask, and he goes back into the building, and when he gets to the building, we said, sorry, you can't come in. We've reached capacity, because they had this huge spacing thing like we did. Remember we had that for a while? Well, Jim was pretty furious. I mean, I was the first person to meet him at the door that day, and he was pretty livid, to be honest. And he was telling me about all of it. But you know what? Jim came in that day. The only reason he came here, we were the next church down the road. But we were open, and we let him in. And so he came in. He made some connections that very day. He went on to study and became a Christian. So he's here most Sundays. And so these kind of things do happen. They happen to somebody here. Not necessarily the door was locked, but it was locked effectively to him because he couldn't get into church. So whenever you think a church can't do anything crazy to turn people away, they can, and they do. Not necessarily our church, but churches. Comments, questions? Yes?
For safety reasons, and this is really important,
in today's world, our doors are locked when service is going on.
Yeah.
But do we have
But
somebody?
we have 2 ushers out there. Anybody comes in late, they're opening the door. It's all good there.
Is that downstairs also, or just up here? Is that downstairs also?
We don't have anybody downstairs. We lock that door because, again, this is the main entrance. But you made a good point, though. You're right. If somebody came, and we're going to have a sign up here for long, it's going to point up this way to the side. But without that sign, I'm sure some people had walked to that back door before, pulled on it, or if they parked around the other side, pulled on that door and didn't come in, you know. So those things are confusing to a visitor.
Hey, Gilbert,
Yes,
I watched the cameras. I have let many people in the back door.
you have?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we have greeters down there, you know, but again, if they come in late, it's, you know, not always somebody down there. But this sign hopefully will alleviate most of that confusion for the people in the back parking lot. Okay, what else? The church is dirty and cluttered now. Our church is not dirty and cluttered, but it's not always pristine, right? It's a 25-year-old building. And so, you know, what happens when you go into your home and there's a patch on the wall and it's been there for 6 months? Do you notice it every day when you walk in? You do? You notice it every day when you walk in? Okay. Most people don't. You know, it's just like looking at your face in the mirror every day. You know, if you look at it every day, it doesn't look the same until somebody sees you 10 years later. What happened to you? You got old, you know. So a lot of times we become anesthetized to something like that. We don't see it, but a visitor will because they have fresh eyes. Whatever's wrong, and I'm going to give you an example here. A lady, it's my wife actually, but came to me about a year or two ago, and she said the toilet seats are wore out in the female's bathroom. It says they look like a shell bathroom, you know. She says she didn't want to go to a shell restroom, so I just went to Bob, and he changed them. So, you know, I would never see that. Likely the preacher would never see that. Likely none of the other elders. We're not going to go in women's bathrooms. But these are the kind of things that turn people off. A woman, I wouldn't want to go sit in on, you know, on a seat that was, you know, all the paints were off of it. And so this is where we need everybody's help. When you see things that don't look right, they look unkempt, they need to be refreshed or fixed, you need to speak up. So, you know, because guess what? Your elders are not going in every classroom every day. Your preachers are not going in every classroom every day. So you see things. Those things that you might just, again, you've taken them for granted because you've seen them so long, may be a turnoff to a visitor. So we always have to look at things how they see them. The 4, we're not going to talk about it a lot today because we're going to try to talk about it later when we talk about connections and greeting. But your people aren't trained to connect with church visitors. Obviously, those 15 minutes before and after church are the high times to really get to know people at a church service. Some churches find a way to make the visitors feel awkward. So who was talking about being very nervous? Was it you and alone? Yeah. You better believe it. When that church, see, if you go to church, all of us are at this church now, so we have a home, we come in, we're kind of relaxed. If you went to Myrtle Beach or someplace and went to the church, you're not going there to become a member, right? You're going, so it's pretty relaxed too when you visit another church. But do any of you remember when you go into new churches for the first time? You're going to be nervous because when you come in that door again, it's almost like a job interview. You know, and what they think when they come in that door is, everybody's looking at me. You know, we're not, but they think that. And so they're already nervous when they come in. And it's easy to make them feel awkward. Now, that being said, we're going to try to greet people, and you see what's said here. Some people won't like that, right? Some people are just not, the first time they come to church, they're kicking them tires. Anybody ever went to a car lot and looking at cars, and the salesman comes out, and you don't even want to see this person. I don't want to talk to them. You just want to look at the cars and look at the stickers. That's the way some visitors are. Some of them want to talk. So as you engage with these kind of folks, if they're pulling away, you know, you're talking to them and they're walking sideways, you need to let them go. They're not ready today, right? And if you try to be too pushy, you really will push them away. So it's all about reading people, right? And you got a very short time to do that, those kind of things. Questions, comments on that? I'll get to you, just give me 1 second. Go ahead.
I'll share a good experience. When we moved to Charleston, and we were looking at a couple different churches. The one we settled on, the first time we visited, it wasn't like an overwhelming number of people coming up to us. It was a smaller congregation, but it was enough, right? And I'll never forget this. And we're still friends with this couple today. They said, "Hey, nice to meet you. Whatever. We see you have kids. We'll show you where stuff is." They stopped whatever they were doing and said, "Hey, we'll show you where the classes is for your son and for your daughter. If you want to sit with us, you can. Or if you want to sit in front of us in case y'all need anything, just let us know." And it was just it wasn't overwhelming, but it was just hey, we'll make sure you're comfortable while you're here. And we're still, like I said, we're still friends with them today. But it was just a really nice experience. That
It was a good experience.
Overwhelming, but it was hey, we'll make sure you're comfortable.
That's great, good. Let me use that. Speak loudly. You're a long ways away from everybody, including me.
I think it's awkward for visitors to come in at 10:25 and church has already started.
Okay.
And the signage says 10:30. And then they come in and it's already started. We're singing, we're not bothering with new people. We gotta get to our seat because church has started. So I think if we're gonna keep the service at 10:30, it needs to start at 10:30. So that when visitors come in, you can talk and mingle and maybe make a connection before they're coming in late because church started.
Okay. That's a valid point. And fellow elders, we can talk about that. That is a valid point. You're not the first person to say this. So I'll tell you the background on that was that we're trying to get the announcements through, so church starts. But I know with us singing, it's like church has already started. Yeah, somebody else? Yeah.
It would turn me off so much to think I was on time, church to be started and have to sneak in. I would be very embarrassed as a visitor.
Okay, and I get that. I think that's a valid point. I will say this to you. I won't promise anything, but we will talk about it. Okay? I see William somewhere. There's Hampton. You agree? We'll talk about it. Okay. Poor or missing signage. So again, we're going to add signs inside too. So I said there's going to be a lot of twos today. At least 2 people in the last year have come to me after walking through that door and said, "Where's the bathrooms?" Now you may say, "Well, the bathroom signs are on the doors." Well, they are, but when you walk in that foyer, you cannot see them. So we're adding signage out there. It's going to say the bathrooms are this way, classrooms are this way, cry rooms right here, visitor centers here. Downstairs is fellowship hall. Downstairs we'll have signs that say upstairs the auditorium. Just a few basic signs to let people know where stuff is because it's embarrassing to have to ask where a bathroom is. Is any man in here like to ask where a bathroom is? No, I know they don't because I used to always get Sue to do it, so I wouldn't have to do it. Well, you're different, so. But most of us don't like doing that. We don't like asking for directions or asking where a bathroom is, right? So we're gonna help that, So what it should be basic things when you come in, and you alluded to this a while ago. You come in, you need to know where they are. Now, I'll still say what Steve says is the ultimate, right? Somebody to take them someplace is the ultimate. And I want to go back to your point. I didn't really prepare to talk about this today, but kids are a big deal. And so, even little things like, a lot of churches, and we have a window on our nursery door, right? Yeah, some churches don't. You could read, a lot of parents won't even put their child in it if it doesn't have a window because it's an unsafe world today. And we already know people don't trust churches. We saw that in the statistics last week. So all these kind of things are important. Again, these visitors don't know us. They completely don't know us at all. Yeah.
Parents are very, our work for preschool parents are very concerned about, is my child going to be safe and going to be cared for when they're in this room?
Tremendous.
And will they be contained until I can come and pick them up? Just because or will I be notified if my child has an issue that I need to be contacted? All the way up through 4th and 5th grade. And we had, with one of ours that was epileptic, that was a big issue for us. Because if something happened, is somebody going to be able to contact?
Right. That reminds me of some things we can maybe do for the future. The technical, this is anybody's up front, whether it's Keaton or Logan or elder or deacon, whoever's up front. But the technical doctrinal language keeps outsiders or turns them off because, you know, we can say words like propitiation, hermeneutics, expository preaching, and several other words. I'm not telling you not to use those words, but a lot of people don't know what they mean. You know, if you come from another church and you're using stuff like this, they don't know what that means. So if you're going to use these, whether it's an announcement or you're teaching a class, you need to give a one-sentence definition of what these things mean because, again, everybody don't know what these are. The Church of Christ tends to be a more deep drill church and the members know or understand a lot of this stuff, but I know from coming from another church, it's not that way. And so we have to be careful. There's nothing wrong with using these words. We just need to define them briefly when they're used. The church bulletin gives inadequate insider information. I tell you, I don't necessarily agree with this point. But what it's saying basically is, you know, we say things like, hey, the youth is meeting next week at Stacy's house. See Sean for direction. Team meetings in charge of refreshments. And, of course, the visitor doesn't know who these are. And it says first names are meaningless. Well, guess what? If you said the second name, it'd still be meaningless to a visitor, right? And we can't sit down here and say, hey, Stacy, you stand up so the visitors can see you, and Sean, no. So some stuff we have to do for our internal communications. It can't all be done through one church and website. So to say we're not going to say things like this, but I will tell you this, within the eldership and the preachers, there's a concerted effort to reduce announcements just because they can be so long at sometimes, you know, because our church does a lot, right? There's a lot going on. So we try to make that as minimum, you know, as possible, but not to say we're not going to have something like this. I think that would be pretty much impossible. Although there are evangelism advocates in the country today that say you shouldn't have any announcements because they only view a tunnel vision of only about visitors. And yeah, if it was only about visitors, that might be right. But we also have members here. So we just got to be careful when we do those kind of things. Questions, comments? Yeah, that's right. That is a correct statement. Yes?
Has there been a discussion about bringing back the meet and greet that we have, the 3 to 5 minute meet and greet?
There has been some discussion, but nothing, you know. But we'll take it into consideration. Personally, I like the meet and greet myself. You know, I kind of like that. But, you know, then you're talking about the service is probably going to go to 11:40 on most days or later. So there's all kinds of things to think about. Yes?
How do you all feel about it?
Raise your hand if you like meet and greet. You want to bring it back. No promises here, okay? That's the majority probably. But remember, you'll be late going to the Chinese buffet when we do that, which is fine with me.
Hey, Gilbert, it's okay. The Baptist Church and Presbyterians, they don't get up to 12, so we'll still beat them.
Yeah. Not if we sit there and talk afterward, though, Ham. That's what my wife says to me sometimes. Well, we was going to get to the buffet, but you talked for 40 minutes. And
I just wanted to say that as having come here as a stranger and not knowing anyone, the meet and greet, take a minute to talk to the person next to you or however we introduced it, is how I kind of got comfortable talking with
you liked it. It didn't make you feel. Didn't make you feel on the spot or anything.
Right, but I came from a church where I was related to all but maybe half a dozen people in the building. So there was a really uncomfortable feeling because I didn't know anybody. So.
Okay. Yes. Sorry.
I personally think it's super awkward, but I think whatever you decide to do, you make that time known. So if service starts at 10:30, it starts at 10:30. If it gets out at 11:45 because of meet and greet, it gets out at 11:45.
Yes.
I think just that communication and the expectation of visitors knowing you're going to start at 10:30 and you're going to get out at 11:45 instead of 11:30 is super important for planning for everybody, members and visitors.
Right. Anybody else? Yes.
When we first came, it was one of the things after we did a couple times, it's kind of odd, because we weren't really members, and we didn't have our group, to kind of go and talk to. So it kind of made us feel a little, I don't know, made me feel like I don't know what to do.
After the first
After
Sunday.
the first few Sundays.
But still, we're not visitors, we're not members coming up and talking to you on the second, third Sunday?
Sometimes, but after a while, you were here for a while, but you haven't officially placed membership, and it just was awkward for us. But the first few times it was great because we were greeted. And part of that was part of probably our fault that we didn't go meet and greet other people. But that needs to be the focus. Is if you're going to do it, you need to be meeting and greeting visitors because it's very comfortable to be. I know Lisa. I'm going to go hang out with Lisa.
Believe you me, we're going to talk about just what you're talking about, and there's nothing wrong with coming in and talking to the people we love and love to talk to, right? But our goal in life really is to go therefore. And so, it's like the 99 and the 1, the 199 or whatever, we need to worry about the ones that are not. Somebody else had a question up here. Yeah, Rodney.
Just invite them to the buffet. That's a talking point.
It's a good talking point.
Everybody likes to eat, so that gives you more opportunity to talk and find out more about them. Form a bond, a relationship.
Yeah, and we're actually going to talk about later on when we get into best practices, taking people out to lunch too, if you desire to. All right, let's see if we can get one more point here. I don't know if I'm out of time or not. Congregation sends its own signals. Do you ever feel like you're sitting in somebody else's pew? I've told this story before. I'll tell it one more time. This happens. Sue and I got moved by my company. We went to this little small church, and we went in and on a Wednesday night, I believe it was. And the pew was there, and there was 2 ladies down at the very end, and it was 5 of us in. We just had our 3rd child. And so we went to sit down, and that lady said, I'm saving that for my sister and her family. Well, that kind of took me aback. I didn't say nothing. I went on. We sat down, and I'll tell you, the church had 2 things working for it that night. She wasn't one of them. One, there was a big hulk of a man. He was a deacon. He was like 6'6", looked like Lurch a little bit. But he was so friendly and nice. He won me over. And then it was the only Church of Christ in town. But these things happen. They happen. And we all sit in our own seats, right? Sue and I have been sitting back in that pew like 2 bags of potatoes for 15 or 20 years. But I'll give it up for anybody who wants to come in and sit. So, we have to think that way, right? Think about that. I think I might be. No, I got 1 more minute. You didn't get contact details. You might have noticed we changed the card lately. Changed the card to make it simpler because what experts say whenever you look at this stuff is the more information you ask for, the less likely you are to get any. And I'm going to put this in your perspective. If you had to fill out a form, not a required form like those doctors make you do, but say an optional form, and it was pretty lengthy and you had a lot of stuff to do and you got an option not to do it, would you do it or would you not fill it out? I'm sure a lot of you would not fill it out. Am I right? Can I get an amen or something? Like this. Okay. It's the same thing with visitors. We were asking for the physical address and all that kind of stuff before. Now all we basically ask for is a name and an email. Would like to see really the phone number on there because it's better to get those 2 things and have a way to communicate with them than to ask for all this other. And they say, I'm not going to fill this out today, So, but I want you to remember this. If I go a minute over, I'm sorry. This is where it goes back to all of you again. Everybody in here, if you see a visitor, needs to make sure they get a card. Now, I'm going to make it easy for you. We have cups out here. They sit on this visitor thing. You go grab one. You don't have to be an elder or a deacon or anybody else. Any of you, go grab that cup, and you take it to that person. And I'm going to tell you, I've said this before, teaching up here about this kind of stuff, but if I give Dee something, if I give her the card, she might say, I'm okay. But if I give her a coffee cup, yeah, she's going to be more willing. Because you're giving them something. It's an icebreaker. So you go get that cup. That's what it's for. We won't have one to take home anyway. Give them the card when you do it. It'll go down very smoothly and easily, and hopefully they'll fill out the card. And this, again, is talking about we do a good job at getting contact details when we get it. Every visitor don't fill out cards here. Probably 33% of them fill out cards, and the others don't. Even though we announce it from here, and we're out there promoting it, some of them are tire kickers and not going to fill out a card the first time. Questions or comments? We've got to stop here, I think. Any? Thank you.